Liana Fix is a historian and political scientist, as well as a resident fellow at the German Marshall Fund. She joins me now from Buffalo, New York, for the second time too, because when we spoke last, it was about a fascinating piece you wrote in Foreign Affairs, headlined, "What if Putin wins?" Well, there's a new piece headlined, "What if Russia loses?" What would Russia losing look like?
Well, thanks so much for having me again. My colleague Michael Kimmich and I, we tried to think through what the situation looks like right now for Russia. And we argue Putin made a strategic blunder because he underestimated the international response, the Ukrainian resistance, but also the Russian population and the public. Russian loss could take different forms. We could see first some attempt of occupation of Ukraine, which would be very costly and perhaps could lead after a couple of years to a withdrawal. But we could also see pockets and parts of Ukraine that remain under Ukrainian control and would be leading a Ukrainian insurgency and resistance against Russian occupation, which would be very costly. So an entire rollback militarily of Russia in Ukraine would be difficult, but Putin can certainly not win this war anymore on his preferred terms.
And to that point, I mean, the thing I think people feel about Putin is it's not in his DNA to back down or even look like he's backing down. How dangerous does that make him if he is indeed losing on the battlefield or stalled and then perhaps to lose public support at home? How dangerous does that make him?
Absolutely, he will use everything, and we've seen this in the last days. He will use more aggressive military power. We've seen the bombardment of cities. He will use the strength that he has. He will use repression and terror. That makes him definitely more dangerous, and that also will define the outcome of the war in general. What this gives as an opportunity for Ukraine is that they are better positioned at the moment on the ground with the support of Western weapons, and they have a cause they fight for. And this is what the Russian president and especially his army are lacking. We argued in our piece, autocratic rulers have a lot of difficulties losing a war and remaining autocratic rulers. So for the Russian president, This can be a very existential war.
It's a long list of miscalculations by him from the very beginning. Meanwhile, though, you know, what damage has he wrought on his own economy, on his own people, particularly if this drags out? And what could that do to his own political survivability? I mean, you know, as you said in the piece, and it's a great line, the lesson autocratic rulers cannot lose wars and remain autocrats. What then would the people or the Kremlin possibly turn on him? What would it take?
Well, it would certainly take the realization that the war in Ukraine is not only the aim of Russia is not only to destroy Ukraine, but that in the same way, Russia would be destroyed. The Russian economy would be destroyed. Russia as a political entity would be weakened. So it's certainly very difficult to imagine after a Russian loss to see a liberal Russia emerging from such a defeat, which will be certainly a humiliating defeat if it is comparable to the Iraq war, or if at some point Russia has to withdraw. And we could see, for instance, Russia fracturing, for instance, in Chechnya. We could see the Russian president losing control over the elites and also over the military elites in his power. In any case, this will be a very dangerous scenario because Russia will not come out of that as a prosperous liberal country, but as a country that has lost a war and is in a very dire state internally.
Which is a fascinating aspect of your article. I mean, you do write that a Russian defeat would be little cause for celebration for the rest of the world. I mean, the fallout of a humiliated pariah state with nuclear weapons intact, that fallout could be considerable, couldn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the challenge would be first to rebuild Ukraine in that case, and then rewrite this would be a huge task for the West. Ukraine would want to join EU and NATO, but it would be a war zone after years of fighting. So that would be a big task. But as much of a challenge would also be to reintegrate Russia somehow into the international community and to prevent that Russia becomes a revanchist power in the middle of the international community that especially Europe will have to worry about, because at some point the United States will say, well, now we finally have to focus on China, and Russia is now very much Europe's responsibility.
It's a fascinating piece you and your co-author wrote. Both of them are on foreign affairs. I urge people to read them. Great analysis. Liana Fix, we'll get you back. Thanks so much.
Thank you.